morning. I'm Jeffrey Hart, and I'm the convener of Heeding Cheney's Call Committee. The committee consists of concerned students, alumni, faculty, and staff, and we are supported wholeheartedly and strongly by federal, state, and local officials, political elected officials, as well as social, civic, and religious leaders, national and local. Our name, Heeding Cheney's Call, is based on our alumni alma mater, our alma mater. The lyrics, "When thou callest alma mater, never shall thou call in vain." We heard the call and we have come. The historic University, Cheyney, is the oldest predominantly African American institution of higher learning in America, established right here in the city of Philadelphia in 1837, known as the Institute for Colored Youth, 175 years ago. 33 years ago, on this date, September the 23rd, the late Dr. Will D. Tate, Professor Sonny Harris, and then students Michael Coard and Jeffrey Hart, along with our attorney, entered these doors to file a federal civil rights lawsuit against the governor, the Secretary of Education, the Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education, the Chancellor, and many others. Today, 33 years later, we stand here to reopen and to investigate that lawsuit and to give to the governor a list of demands that will be read to you a little later. We have recognized that Cheyney University still needs to be treated as the other 13 owned white institution, as the only black owned institution by the state. You will hear from several speakers today. I'm going to ask that everybody respectfully keep their time limited, as we have quite a list, but I do want you to know that we stand together as a widespread national, local coalition to demand parity through equity for our beloved historic Cheyney University. You will hear from Student Government President Malik Williams. The Honorable Chaka Fatah will follow, followed by the Honorable Vanessa Lowery Brown, the Chair of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus, and then by Honorable Jannie Blackwell, who is an alum and the Chair of the City Council Education Committee. Following all of those elected officials, you will hear from our attorney and alum, Michael Coard. Student Government President, Malik Williams.
My name is Malik Justice Williams. I am the President of Student Government Cooperative Association of Cheyney University, the first HBCU in this nation, but the last school to receive parity through equity. Through the lack of support from PASHE, the message is quite clear that the value of an educated African American in this nation is not of much relevance. It is not by coincidence, but by design, that of the 14 state schools, the only HBCU in the school system is not financially equal. Money talks, and the message that we are hearing is that the state does not care. You may not get everything that you work for, but you will work for everything that you get. So we fight. We fight for what we We fight for not what we can get today, but we fight for what we can gain tomorrow. Cheyney University students deserve more. Cheyney University students deserve the best. Cheyney University students deserve what every other student gets and has access to. We deserve equality. Now is the time that Cheyney University reclaims the status of excellence in education that we once had. Thank you.
All right. Well, to all who are gathered, and I want to thank both Jeff and Michael Coard. This litigation that began decades ago, the state entered into a consent decree as part of the Adams decision, and the commitment was to bring Cheyney to parity with the other 13 state-owned institutions. We have not achieved that over these many years. And so, gathering here this morning, we are taking the initiative to insist that more be done to live up to the state's commitment. In the Adams case, it was made clear that in the state, in signing on to the consent decree, made clear that it had discriminated in funding and in program areas vis-a-vis Cheyney as compared to the other 13 state institutions. It's critically important to understand Cheyney's vital role in the production of teachers and other college graduates that fill important professional duties throughout our state and country. So we come today to make a statement about how insistent, even though we've been at this for decades, that more be done and that none will rest until Cheyney has the same and appropriate level of support along with its sister institutions throughout the state system. So I join with all who have gathered and many who are not here, who have this belief that Cheyney not only is the oldest and therefore an important part of our country's history, but Cheyney has a role to play in shaping our country's future, and we have to stand here to create the foundation for that to happen. Thank you.
All right.
Good morning. I'm Vanessa Brown. I'm the chair of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus. And I'm also represented, I'd like to ask them to come up, Representative Ron Waters, who is the secretary of our caucus, and Representative Steve Kinsey, please come up with me. I'd also like to let you know that Representative Jim Roebuck could not be here, but he did send a press statement today. And we also have a member who is an alum, and that's Representative Thaddeus Kirkland in Chester. I'd like to thank Michael Coard and Jeffrey Hart and the alumni of Cheyney for inviting me here for this anniversary acknowledgement. As chairwoman of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus and a lifelong resident of Philadelphia, I value what Cheyney stands for, a quality education for disadvantaged and minority students. The Philadelphia region has been blessed to be the home of Cheyney University. First opened in 1837 by Quakers as an institute for colored youth, and now part of the state system of higher education, it was the first in the country of what we now refer to as historically black colleges, of one I'm proud to say I'm an alum of Howard University. Lincoln University is the only such school here in Pennsylvania. Well, we should be Lincoln, no. We have Cheyney and Lincoln.
No.
Cheyney, I'm sorry. Okay, Cheyney, I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. I'm glad I have my colleagues with me. Thank you.
We do.
All right, we stick together. While we should be proud of heritage of being a leader in education for minorities, there is also much shame with our treatment of Cheyney in the past. Just 33 years ago, it took a lawsuit for the state to fund college as an equal to the other 13 colleges. Title VI of 1964 required the state to fund the school at an even level with the remaining predominantly white schools. Sadly, it took a lawsuit in 1980, 16 years later, to force Pennsylvania to treat Cheyney as an equal. Yet even now, there remains a level of inequality in this state system, and it must be rectified. We need to give all students an environment to learn using current and emerging technologies in a safe and comfortable environment. We need to find ways to make attending Cheyney more affordable to its economically disadvantaged student base. We also need to rebuild the student body, because if they cannot afford it, they can't be there. So therefore, Cheyney loses money for having a decreased enrollment. As numerous studies have shown, the best method for lifting young people out of poverty is through a good education, which can lead to better career opportunities. Investing in education is crucial for the good of the community. In fact, it is good for the entire Commonwealth. That's why I continue to champion a state budget which funds our colleges and universities at a level playing ground for all students in this Commonwealth. Today, I vow that the Pennsylvania Legislative Caucus and I will continue to fight to strengthen and grow the university and the entire state of higher education in this future. This is good for our Commonwealth. This is good for our nation. Thank you.
Good morning. As always, I'm going to ask my majority leader, Curtis Jones, to join me. And I always thank God for the privilege of being here on Earth this day and being with you this morning. I want to thank Michael Coard for all he's doing, for heeding the call. I'm proud to be a graduate of CHEYNEY University. I'm proud to be an alumna. Thank you.
Lady from CHEYNEY.
My sister is a principal now, a CHEYNEY graduate. I have a sister-in-law who's a college professor, Dr. Elizabeth Brooks, a graduate of CHEYNEY. Her relatives before her, the Beards and the Hawkins. I have two granddaughters, one a teacher and one a lawyer. All of us call CHEYNEY our home. So we're proud to be able here to fight for all those points that Michael Coard talked about, certainly from increasing enrollment to making sure that CHEYNEY has the ability to have the programs it needs and the materials it needs for smart classrooms, certainly to do all those things that other universities get a chance to do and we don't. So we're here for the long haul. We thank you all for doing here, and we want to fight the good fight to make sure that CHEYNEY University gets what it deserves. Thank you.
I just wanted to say one thing with my colleagues here is that separate but very unequal should not apply. Separate from the other 13 colleges and universities and unequal in its funding, when we look at the fact that we built 18 prisons, 18 new incarcerating facilities in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, yet for 13 years funding hasn't increased for this university. There was a play called The Day of Absence when African Americans just didn't show up. What happens if CHEYNEY University graduates didn't show up? There wouldn't be an art museum that was designed by a CHEYNEY grad. There would not be diplomacy from diplomats. What would 60 Minutes look like without Ed Bradley? So CHEYNEY has made its mark in Pennsylvania and in the history of this country. It should be given not separate but equal funding. Thank you.
I just want to say that I'm going to allow, because we did not know he was here, State Senator Anthony Hardy Williams the opportunity to say something. He is a minority whip and also on the Education Committee. Senator Williams.
Good morning, all. Mine is hopefully brief. For those who don't know, the legacy of CHEYNEY goes very deeply with me. My mother is a CHEYNEY graduate, a proud person who taught in the school district of Philadelphia, a teacher and administrator. My father, Hardy Williams, is a proud alum of Cheyney University. So Cheyney's very, very, very much a part of our family existence. What obviously pains me is that when I listen to the councilwoman read off the extraordinary people who have graduated from Cheyney University, the context of this moment is about African Americans. But I want you to understand the larger statement is about Americans. While we are proud of our heritage, our history, the significance of what this school did, it was created because of the segregation of this country and the history of denial of African Americans the opportunity to express themselves academically with excellence in this country. And so we created our own. The set of circumstances which we are confronted in 2013 is the state has chosen again to segregate us, not by color, but by money. Inferior resources, requiring academic outcomes of excellence. And then pointing to the victim when they rob him and say it's their fault. When they suggest that Cheyney is not what it used to be, well, one, Cheyney's not allowed to be what it used to be. What I further will tell you is that while they do and take the money, they are in fact also stripping the board as we stand here today. This governor, this administration, we as an elected body will do one thing, understand this. While we will protest today, this budget will be the most battering, difficult, challenging budget that this governor will ever fear if he decides not to fund Cheyney, if he decides not to send back those board members, and most importantly, if the justice, which is standing with us in the embodiment of this young man, is not supported in the way that all of us know that all Americans are beneficial of, that we will make sure we extract the political consequences to this governor and to this administration. We're grateful for these lawyers, we're grateful for this gathering, but most importantly, this is not a protest for the sake of words, this is a protest based in action. Thank you.
I want to thank all the elected officials, Councilman Curtis Jones for speaking, and Representative Waters is here too. But let's get to the meat of the issue, and that is the demands to the governor. And for that, please, our attorney, my alum, my friend for over 33 years, Mr. Michael Coard.
Before I begin, and I'm going to go slightly off the agenda, I see that there are several elected officials here that did promise to show up but indicated they were very busy, but they came nonetheless. So even though they're not on the agenda, I want to invite any elected official who hasn't said a few words to come to the microphone and say a few words, and few is the operative word there, because you did take time from your busy schedule to be here. We appreciate you standing in support, but if there's any elected official who has not said anything, who wishes to, we have here today Councilwoman Jannie Blackwell, Councilman Curtis Jones, from the office of Blondell Reynolds Brown. We have State Senator Leander Washington. You've heard from Senator Anthony Williams, State Rep Stephen Kinsey. You've heard from State Rep Vanessa Lowry Brown. Ron Waters is here. James Roebuck tried to get here. He sent a strong letter of support. Congressman Bob Brady spoke to us several times, said he supports our efforts. So if there's, again, any elected official who wants to spend a minute or two who hasn't spoken, the microphone is yours. Anybody?
I think everybody want to hear from you right now, Mike.
Sounds good. I was hoping you were going to say that. Having said that, let me say this. There's a press packet that we circulated that indicates exactly why we're here today. And why we're here today is because it's 33 years to the very day that the first civil rights lawsuit was filed on behalf of Cheyney University. Back then, September 23, 1980, up until today, September 23, 2013, the same problems exist. The same demand is being made. And that demand is parity through equity. And what do we mean by that? Parity basically means to put us on the same footing as the other people. But we're talking about equity, not just equality. Equality means everybody gets the same thing, and that would be a good thing. But let me use this analogy. For the last 10 years, the other 13 colleges and universities have been getting 90% of the pie. Cheyney gets 10. Second year, 90%, Cheyney 10. So now fast forward to the 10th year, for example, and they're talking about, well, we're going to make it equal. Well, equality is insufficient.
We're talking about equity. We're talking about making up for lost time. And that's why we say our battle here is parity through equity. How do we get that? As the demand letter indicates. And the demand letter works like this. Before you actually file the formal civil rights complaint, you should give the defendants the opportunity to work this thing out. And we listed several defendants, starting off with Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett, Acting Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Secretary of Education, Dr. Carolyn Dumars. I think you can hear me without. Can you hear me without that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, move a little closer because that noise is really irritating. So the defendants that we're talking about at this point include the Governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Tom Corbett, Acting Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Secretary of Education, Dr. Carolyn Dumars, Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education Acting Chancellor, Dr. Peter Garland, and PASSY Chancellor, Frank T. Brogan, and finally, PASSY Board of Governors Chairman, Guido M. Crescini. Now, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to make sure that Cheyney is treated not just fairly, not just equally, but equitably. And how do we do that? Well, we laid out several demands to those defendants. And we said to them, this press conference today is to announce our first step in the step toward major civil rights litigation. However, we can forego that if you're willing to work out a reasonable compromise, a reasonable settlement. I'm not going to go into all the specifics right now, but I will say this. What we're asking, or not asking, what we're demanding from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is that they revise their inequitable funding formula. That's the key issue here. The state has a formula to determine what schools get what, but a lot of that is based on student enrollment. And Cheyney, as a small black university, has a lower student enrollment than a larger white university. But if the funding formula awards those with the largest student enrollment, then it obviously punishes those with the lower student enrollment. So they say, we can't give you any money because you don't have enough students. We say, we don't have enough students because you're not giving enough money. That's the key issue here. So the first issue is the inequitable funding formula. The second issue is basically a breach of contract issue. In 1999, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania was forced by the federal government's Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights to sit down and negotiate a settlement regarding Cheyney. Federal government forcing the Commonwealth to sit down to work out a fair treatment for Cheyney. Well, what happened? The governor signed that 1999 agreement and indicated that they would go along with what the federal government required, but they didn't. They breached it. So our second demand is that they finally come back to the table and comply with the 1999 agreement that they breached shortly after they signed it. And if anybody knows anything about what's going on with higher education in black universities, in Maryland as we speak, 4 black colleges and universities have filed a major civil rights lawsuit against the governor of Maryland. Why? Because the federal government in year 2000 forced Maryland to sit down and work out an agreement to make sure that those 4 black colleges were treated right. Maryland breached that 2000 agreement with the Office for Civil Rights. And those 4 schools are now seeking $1 billion. Well, come over to Cheyney, come over to Pennsylvania. We have a 1999 agreement with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and they breached it. We're not asking for $1 billion, but if you do the math, 4 schools, $1 billion, I think that's $250 billion. That sounds like a nice round number to put Cheyney where it needs to be. So first, the funding formula. Second, the 1999 agreement. Third, the physical facilities. Fourth, Cheyney started out, or got its claim to fame, as a teacher's college. We want to go back to highlighting Cheyney and that brand, not exclusively as a teacher school, but making sure people understand what Cheyney represents. That's our 4th demand. And our 5th deals with the austerity issue. We all know that the governor has slashed the budget all across the board to all the universities, and not just in education, but everywhere. What we're saying is that you can't do that to Cheney. You've already done wrong to Cheney for decades. Now it's time to do the right thing, so no austerity measures. And finally, well actually not finally, next to finally, we want to make sure that there's what we call no duplication of programs. That if Cheney comes up with a program that's going to be attractive to people, programs like nursing, programs like electrical engineering, programs like that, that a nearby school, for example, Westchester, can't duplicate that. Because now if they duplicate that, people see Westchester, more students, more facilities, and therefore send their children there. The 1999 agreement stated that that could not happen, that there could be no duplication of programs that Cheney comes up with. And the final, and I do mean final this time, we want to make sure that the governor doesn't play political games. There's a board of trustees at every university. At Cheney, they call it the Council of Trustees. We want to make sure that that Council of Trustees is not stacked or packed with political hacks, people who are going to undermine what Cheney stands for. So we're calling for an immediate moratorium of any proposal by the governor to suggest anybody to replace anybody at Cheney University. There's much more that I can say, but I want to wrap this up and leave time for Q&A, but I do want to give a big shout out to those who supported us. Again, Councilperson Jannie Blackwell, Councilperson Curtis Jones, Councilperson Blondell Reynolds Brown, State Senator Leander Washington, State Senator Anthony Williams, State Representative Stephen Kinsey, State Representative Vanessa Lowery Brown, State Representative Ron Waters, State Representative James Roebuck, Congressman Chaka Fatah, Congressman Bob Brady, the NAACP through Jerry Mondesire, who's trying to make his way here, the NAN, N-A-N, National Action Network, headed by none other than Reverend Al Sharpton. And I want to give a big shout out to the pastors, the people who are serious men and women of the cloth who have large congregations who came out to support us or issued strong statements of support, like Enon Pastor Reverend Dr. Alan Waller. And with us today from Mother Bethel, historic Mother Bethel AME, Reverend Mark Tyler. Also from Cheney University, Reverend Kenneth Dupree, and finally, Minister Rodney Muhammad. We want to thank all of them, and we want the governor to know we're coming, we're coming, we're coming. Thank you very much.